forgive me now for it because you got stuck in traffic.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Good morning.
Mr. St. Louis, it has been a long time. I mean, I know it. Since in the days of Monjelu School.
Yes.
Yeah,
Good.
and I can go back to the days of Miss Laurie
Mhm.
and Mr. Cham and then Denise too because
Good.
there's a
Denise.
park crew and
That's
let me tell
right.
you something.
That's right. It's
Yeah.
a lot of history. It's a lot of history. It's a lot of history. It's a lot of history. I enjoy those days of working with young people
Yes.
too much. Wow. I still look forward to working with young people because they seems to bring a certain amount of life into whatever it is we are doing. And I'm happy to have been able to impact some little lives, small as it might be.
Yes.
Yes. I've met a number of persons who indicate to me that it is because you have said, sometimes I don't even remember that I ever said these things, but that's what they thought, and I feel comfortable and good with it.
Yeah, that's the joy and satisfaction of playing your part, just watching how it impact the lives of somebody else.
Yes.
Yes. Wow, Mr. St. Louis is a man who has been around. For those of you who don't know, he has been around for a whole lot. Now, well, I might be giving away his age if I say that, but very knowledgeable, very knowledgeable. And if it's one time you can say that gray hair comes with wisdom, feel free to say that no, because he has a whole lot of it. You've been around quite some time, even post independence, and the whole build up to it. Um, Even from when Grenada actually gained its independence and then moving forward to that. I want us to talk a little bit of some of that history because, there are lots of folks listening now. There are lots of folks now walking around now that don't really understand that history. And sometimes, you hear it from people and they may read a thing or two in a history book, but somebody, who has been there, who lived it, who can tell them, hey, this is what really happened. This is the story. I mean, you've been around from you've been from the days of the premier to the days of the prime minister to the days of the revolution. I mean, you've seen every prime minister, you've seen every governor general.
Exactly. Actually, I would tell you this: much too much of our history is not recorded and not recalled. I would say that from
Not
front.
recorded and not recalled.
Not recalled and not recorded.
Mhm.
We hear a lot of things happen and we say, well, this happened in Grenada. Yes, it might have happened in Grenada, but sometimes each one of us have our own perspective as to what really did happen in Grenada.
Mhm.
I think I was aware of politics. Let me say aware of politics since in the 1960s. 1960, 67, we got associated statehood with Britain. I was around. In fact, I was working at that time, so it's quite a bit of time. 74, we came to independence. And if you recall, independence came with a lot of struggle. And the struggle was not so much to gain independence from a number of persons, but more a struggle to keep us away from independence by a number of us. We felt that the leader at the time, Eric Matthew Gary, was not the right person to lead us into independence. So while people may not have had an issue with independence in itself, what they had an issue with was the leadership.
Why was that?
And I think, you see, Eric Gary came out of the 1950s with the struggles and so forth, and he was an icon in Grenada in the fact that he was able to fight the cause of the working class, the laborers in particular, those persons who worked on the estates from 6 in the morning till 7 in the evening, and that type of thing, carrying all these. And he came and he struggled with them to get certain better conditions, including the condition of pay. So people rallied around him. But somewhere in the 60s and the 70s, I think it started with 62 when he was accused of squandermania. And he felt that that was unjust. In my
Mm.
opinion, he felt that it was unjust.
But if somebody is fighting for the workers and that kind of stuff, I
Mhm.
mean that in itself is literally telling somebody, you know what, you deserve more, you deserve better, and I'm here to fight for you. So
Yes.
why him not being the fittest person to lead us into independence? What was the mindset of some of these people going into a situation like that?
Now let's face it, Grenada has been and still is divided among those who consider themselves to be upper class, as against those who are considered to be lesser or lower class.
Okay.
And he struggled to bring the lower class people up to a certain level. And the upper class people did not feel comfortable with that. They did not like that. So it started there, where the upper people felt that he was too much, seeking too much for the lower people. And so they resisted him big time,
Right.
big time. If you note that at that time there were these two political parties, mainly the GNP and the GULP. The GNP was always considered to be a party of the rich and the famous, the big
Right.
people,
Mhm.
the
The upper
ruling class,
echelon.
the ruling class people.
Yeah.
And as such, they carried a certain level of what you might call it weight.
Hmm.
And as such, they played that weight against Gary and the lower class, the working class people, let me put them so.
Right.
And when Gary in 1972 election said, listen, we are going to fight this election on the need to get independence. Because at that time, the Caribbean was heading in that direction anyhow. And he thought that we should go along that line. What happened is that a number of the other people, the upper people, resisted that. And then you had things happening like the nurses' struggles and those issues. And we have a new group of persons coming on the stage called the New Jewel Movement. And they seem to have wanted to gain power even at the cost of anybody and everybody. And as such, they joined the resistance movement. They
Okay.
basically joined the resistance movement. And
So in other words, they were more in line. The New Jewel movement was more in line with the direction in which Gary himself was going at the time.
at that point in
At
time,
that point in time.
but they did not want Gary to be the leader to independence.
Oh, okay. You see, now
So
we're understanding it. So even though
yeah,
that they were heading in the same direction, they had an issue
they had
with
an
who
issue.
was leading this whole
Mhm.
call, this whole
that
collective effort.
that type of thing.
Okay.
So they joined the resistance movement, saying we should not have independence under Eric Gary. It's
Right.
not that we shouldn't have independence,
No, because
but
around that
not
time
under.
Barbados just
Barbados
had
had
their
just got their
Trinidad was
independence.
was,
Trinidad went
was
ahead.
yes.
Jamaica went ahead. Guyana had just got independence, and so Grenada was next in line, basically,
Right.
of the small islands. Yes, we wanted to become independent, but a lot of people did not feel that Gary was the right person to
To
lead
lead us
them
into that
into
direction.
independence.
Okay, so we got
Yes.
to the point where we got independence, and then 1974 came. Talk to us about 1974, that whole period there, 1974, 1975, and some of the things that surrounded it as we got to independence.
Now, one of the things I would like to say here is that in addition to all the resistance, I don't think we as a Grenadian people were educated enough onto what independence would mean for us. And as such, we did not feel that we had to do any work towards gaining or securing our independence. We felt, and we were given that to understand, that independence would work for us. Independence would take us to where we want to go, even without us having to struggle. And even today, you find we have that similar situation where, as a Grenadian people in the mass, we depend on somebody to do things for us rather than us putting our shoulders to the wheel and trying to do something for ourselves. That's why we complain a lot about, hey, Grenada ain't going forward. But is Grenada able to go forward if we as a people are not willing to go forward?
Who takes Grenada forward?
Who takes Grenada forward? And that's the big question. We feel that, okay, today we depend on the government or the prime minister to do things. And we as a people may not be willing and ready to initiate any kind of activity that could help the nation. We are selfish people, I might like to say that.
Mm.
We are a selfish people. We believe that we must have it, and a lot of other persons may not
You know
be
that.
able to get.
Mm.
So this is where we are. In 74, well, the struggle of the Rupert
Rupert
Bishop
Bishop,
and
yes.
all that type of thing. We know that kind of struggle. And as a result of that, Grenada became independent in a dark period.
Maybe because that whole Rupert Bishop issue, I mean, that in itself surrounded part of the whole build up to independence because they were part of the fraction as well that was anti the whole Gary
Anti-Gary
movement.
movement,
And
yes.
so Gary now wanted to be able to say, well, listen, we're going forward with this and I'm prepared to crush anybody or anything that
That
stands in my
stands
way to
in
get
my
it.
way.
Right.
And I believe that as a result of all of those things, Gary became a little more hardened in his approach to things. And he tried to curb any kind of resistance, even with force. Even with
But
force.
even a situation like that, I mean, that too could be understandable because, folks say from everything that I've learned, I should say, growing up, I understand Eric Gary to be a visionary.
He was.
This
He
man,
was.
from everything that was taught to me, it was this guy could have seen and understood where Grenada needed to go, understood the future, understood what his people needed, how we need to get there, that kind of thing. So, with that sort of vision and purpose, it is easy to say people, no, 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 this is where we're going, and this is how we're
This
going to
is how
get
we
there, and
want
I'm
to
going to
get
lead
there,
you
and we're
into
going
it.
to go there regardless.
Yes.
No, that is the kind of person. People say, historians will say, Gary was a man before his time. He was a man
I've heard
who
that.
saw the future long before even any other persons could envision anything. Well, we're here today. Where would we be tomorrow? And he is already saying, I am going. One of his mottos was, the impossible, the difficult we do now, the impossible takes a little more time. The difficult we do now, the impossible takes a little more time. So in his mind, there was nothing impossible. If it could be thought of, it could have been achieved. And as such, he went for it. He went
Right.
for it. But the resistance was such that, as I said, Grenada became independent the night of the 6th of February. When the flag was hoisted, it was hoisted in darkness. It was hoisted in darkness. They just had these lights around the place to give light, but it was hoisted in darkness. And so Grenadians came to independence without even knowing what it is they were getting into.
Right.
And I would dare say that even today, our independence is not being developed. In fact, I might like to say this. 79 almost derailed our independence. Some people may not agree with me, but 79 almost derailed our independence. And we can say, thank God that it did not last, because it could have been a situation where we, as a little tiny spot on the map, were entering into the struggles of these big superpowers and taking sides. And as such, if it had continued, Grenadians may have been in a situation where what we think about as independence today would not have been.
Some folks may argue the point and say the period between 1979, because I've heard this, the period between 1979 and 1983 were the most productive periods of our country. When you look at the time involved and what we would have achieved, some folks may say, well, just maybe we were heading in the right direction, being as an independent nation. So there's a little bit of contradictory to that thought.
And I would like to say like this: yes, we had a lot of production, but it was directed production, directive productivity. You had to do, or think of the number of persons who were incarcerated because they dare to think differently. Think about that.
Yeah.
And so yes, it was a productive period. I would always say the things like the manufacturing sector, that was on the up.
Yes.
The education sector, that was on the up. Every year for the 4 years, we had a year of something.
Yeah.
Year of production, year of education,
And
year
that
of
that gave us that
agriculture.
gave us some kind
That,
of purpose.
yes. But I'm saying to you, yes, if it was done with the freedom and the involvement of the people directly, it could have been achieved. But a lot of it was directed, controlled,
Right.
and as such, it meant that we were giving up what we consider to be freedom, what we consider to be independence, so that we can be managed. You will
Look,
hear
look.
people say,
Go ahead.
for example, if it was in the revolution, you couldn't have do so and so. You couldn't have do so and so. Why couldn't you have done it?
It was
It,
controlled.
it was controlled. That
Right.
is in my opinion, and I believe other persons have that similar opinion. It was controlled.
Okay.
And so that period, 79, 83, was a period when we would have redefined ourselves, or we would have been redefined. And we would have either been in one camp or the other camp.
Let's
Rather than
let's yeah. Let's take a look now at let's compare these eras, because here we are today, 2022, and you hear folks saying, even folks who lived long enough to be a part of seeing what the revolution, you know, how it came about, how it ended, even before the revolution, Gary being a visionary and all of that.
Mhm.
And some people now would sit back and create the three eras: the revolutionary era, the prior to the revolution, of course, and where we are today, generally. And most of the times when I ask this question, people tend to think I'm going down a political line. It is not a political line. It is a patriotic line. This is a national line.
Yes.
When we look now at these three different eras, I mean, how far apart are they? Are they far apart? Are there any glaring differences? Are there any things that should have been done that we didn't do? How do we move from this point? Because some folks may say, we've progressed. Some would say that we've been stagnated. Others would say we're moving very slow. How do you compare, or can you even compare them?
Okay, let's take the period between 83 and now. I'm putting it that big period. What have we achieved in that period of time? Honestly, what have we achieved? When we look at where we are today, as against where we were in 74, 79, 79, 83, what have we really and truly achieved? A spirit of dependency. That's what we have achieved so far. Yes, you might say, well, okay, we are told that a lot of things are happening, but are we seeing the benefits of those things for us? So I would think, I am saying, what I'm giving is my personal opinion.
Sure.
I would think that we have regressed since 1983.
Mm.
We have regressed. And we are at a stage where now, a lot of the things that we had then, we don't have them anymore. Let's take
For
the
instance.
manufacturing, for example.
Mhm.
We used to make, in the revolution, we used to make cod saltfish.
Mhm.
We used to can our fruits and vegetables. We used to can them. We used to have a number of local products that we can see on the shelf. The tomato ketchup. They may not have been perfect, but with time they should have improved. Since 1983, we have stopped all of that. So effectively, we have gone back. Now, all the things that we were planning to produce between that period, now we are importing them from someplace.
Mhm.
We used to have a lot of nutmegs, we used to have bananas, we used to have that. Where are they today? All of these are things that we hear about. Yes, the nutmeg is still around to some extent. The cocoa is still around to some extent. How much is that benefiting us? When was the last time a nutmeg farmer said to you, I'm prepared to get a bonus at Christmas time? When was the last time?
About 15 years ago.
Exactly. So what is happening? We had been producing the second largest amount of nutmeg in the world. Today, where are we? The farmers working they cannot get anything for it. Yes, they get the $5 or the $10 or whatever the nutmeg is per pound. No, but what else?
Yeah.
And every pound of nutmeg they sell, they should have been some little bit has been coming out towards a Christmas or a end of year bonus. Where is that? 15 years ago, you say that we have not had any kind of a bonus. That to me is a regression because now there's nothing.
Do you think
Any
that? Go ahead.
any farmer now has to shove his hand in his pocket deeper and deeper, deeper every time he wants to produce anything, and the results are not get coming back to him. So those are the kinds of things I'm seeing as the legacy of our post-revolution
Right.
independence. Honestly,
Do you think that there are things that maybe we are overlooking that we should start revisiting and then start readapting as part of our growth? Because I mean, take for instance, um, we had land for the landless. We heard about that.
mm-hmm.
We heard about development and all of that during the revolution period. And as you mentioned, we also heard about things like as you say, that whole production and
Manufacturing sector
manufacturing
and
and
so
all of
forth.
that.
Yes.
Are there things that you think that should be readopted now? And what are some of those things that could take us to that trajectory that you think that we should really be heading into, especially now?
Now, if you look at the period when we had these productions and so forth, people were involved.
Hmm.
People were involved, whether they were directed or whether they were involved. Today we do not have any of those things, and I'm sure if you look around the country, you see so many of our fruits and vegetables, well, fruits in particular, going to waste because we do not have any market for them. We do not have any use for them, productive use for them. So I am thinking that if we were to be able to get some kind of a production going, some kind of manufacturing sector going, where we can take those fruits and put them into certain, let's say, can them, whatever we can do with them to add value and to
Mm.
help us, we would have been much, much, much more in place. Now, another thing is that we depend so much on somebody else. And that is something we are not yet ready. And I will say that every time we are not yet ready for what we should have as independence. We're not ready. In fact, we have returned back to those days because we are not educated. We still believe that somebody must do it for us. We still believe that somebody must guide us, direct us into what we must do for independence. As a people, we are still not yet in that place where we can say, I love my country enough to make some level of sacrifice so that my country can grow. If I can get something for myself, I feel comfortable and care not about what happens to the rest of the nation.
Mm.
And that's part of our problem. We're
Um,
not educated enough and we're not willing to be educated enough to build our own sector.
48 years is a long time. I mean, here we are now, 48 years later, and we're still having this conversation.
And
We're on the verge of celebrating our 48th anniversary of independence. And as we mentioned earlier on today, very soon we'll be staring down the barrel of
50
celebrating our
years.
50th
50
anniversary.
years, yes.
What, if any at all, are some of the things that you think that we can do to even enhance one, the way we celebrate this, the way we first of all celebrate
Mm.
this whole process of independence, and two, what are some of the things that we can do to instill that manner of which you speak, of being more dependent, being more caring? What are some of the things that we can do to lead up to that, to actually bring people to the stage where, you know what, this is what we're supposed to do, this is where we really supposed to be?
Mhm.
What are some of the things that you can suggest that would bring us to that point?
Okay. Now, on the 7th of February this year coming, we are going to see, well, maybe we've seen them already this week, a number of persons parading around the town, the country with red,
Green.
yellow, and green.
Yeah.
And they feel that they are patriotic because they are wearing green or yellow or red. But what is happening is that a number of our people are removing one or other of the colors and identifying with a particular one. For example, yellow. Because I feel I don't like what is happening with the government in power, I am not going to wear a thing with red, yellow, and green. I'm going to wear a lot of red, yellow and a little bit of green or a little bit of red. Or if I am on the side of the government, I wear a lot of green
Yeah.
and a little bit of yellow and a little bit of red.
Yes.
Is that patriotism or is that partyism? Because we are simply identifying. And when the parties, if we cannot build unity in Grenada as far as independence is concerned, we are doing nothing. If we cannot help our people to understand there are major issues that are affecting our country, and it has nothing directly to do with whether it is green, yellow, red, or blue that is in office. It has to do with the nation, the country as a whole. Every person is entitled to benefit from whatever happens in Grenada. But every person has to be contributing towards benefiting from what is taking place in Grenada. We have a system of exclusion rather than inclusion. And I think that if we are going to go forward, we have to change that to make it a system of inclusion. And no one should be left out. Now, opinions, views happen. And my view may not be in keeping with your view, but my view has some weight someplace. And if we listen to your view, my view, and the other person's view, we can come up with an understanding of what it is we need as a nation. People matter. People
Have you ever
matter.
thought at any point, based on the knowledge and the history that you have you ever thought at any point, you know what, I, Cecil St. Louis, need to start documenting this? Because you made mention earlier on that one of the issues that we have is that our history is not
It's
properly
not recorded
documented.
or recorded.
Yeah,
Yes.
not recorded or recalled. I love that. Um, Cecil St. Louis, a book by Cecil St. Louis, History Recorded and Recalled.
Honestly, I've never put it in those types of terms. I think I think a lot, but I have never really thought of placing these things. But now that you mention it, who knows?
Yeah, because you see,
I'm not young anymore, but still.
yeah, because you see, with this kind of knowledge and wisdom, I think it has to be documented so that my kids can look beyond what my perspective alone, what I say, and read something on it. I mean, when I sit back and I take a read of that George Brezan's Grenada Island of Conflict.
Yes.
I mean, that is such. I mean, if you, and I'm telling people here, if you never had the opportunity to grab that, take a read of it, because it would give you a greater understanding as to why we are where we are, and what are some of the things that we need to do to move forward. You have to learn to read between the lines. It's good poetry in motion, I like to call it. So maybe there's an opportunity right here, Mr. St. Louis. I mean, who knows? History recorded and recalled. That's the name of it right there, free.
I see you. I see you. I see you. I see you. Brother, that's how it
Yeah.
is. Life is a dynamic thing,
Yes.
and every day brings its own challenges. Who knows? Something may come out of this.
Working along with young people, as you mentioned, is a passion for you. I mean, because
Amen.
you have been.
I've
I
been
mean,
there.
I've known you since the days of being the principal
Oh,
of the Monjalo
lovely.
RC school.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You
Yes.
you were my principal back in the day. I was very short.
Uh-huh.
You couldn't make me out them time.
I couldn't see you then.
No. Them times when they send me to take out a passport picture, you see my whole body.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, first a shot is my whole body. They see the passport picture.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
God has blessed me with some vertical
Vertical
some
and
vertical
vertical
talent.
whatever talent.
Yeah, so
Moving on.
I'm
Lovely.
enjoying that.
Amen.
Yeah.
yes,
So,
yes, yes,
but yeah,
yes.
but thanks a lot for your and somebody else is saying you were the principal at Bolio RC School as well.
I was principal in Bolio RC School.
Yeah.
Actually, I started my teaching in Bolio RC School.
Mm-hmm.
I went to Woburn RC, I went to Woburn Methodist,
Mm.
and then I went to Montjaloux as principal. And
Okay.
then I went back
Back
to Bolio
as
as principal.
okay.
That's where I retired in 2007.
Okay, because my
So,
wife is saying you were the principal at Bolio RC School or teacher at Bolio RC School or something
yeah,
along those
I
lines
taught
during the
there and I
time.
was principal there.
Yes, yeah.
Right, yes, for many years.
All right,
Mhm.
Mr. St. Louis. I mean, I would love to have this conversation, long because there are lots of things from a historical perspective that I think that we need to discuss. There are lots of things that I believe we need to pay more attention to and look outside of party lines. I
Exactly.
think we've become a little
Mm.
too partisan. No, not a little. Sorry, we've become
Too,
way too
too
partisan.
much, too partisan.
And
Too much.
as a result of that, I think we are losing some of the gist of what our history really means to us.
Exactly.
Independence goes beyond the oil down, beyond wearing the red, green, and yellow.
That's where I'm at.
Yeah, it goes beyond coming
Mhm.
together for a good lime and
Yeah.
celebrating and drinking.
Mhm.
It goes way beyond that. It has a lot to do with our mindset. It has a lot to do with what we impart to our kids and what we
Mhm.
take from it as well.
Our own resolve to make a difference.
Yes.
That's because independence cannot happen if we as a people feel that we are still enslaved. We cannot have independence.
Mm.
And we still feel that we are in that dependency zone where independence cannot happen.
You know what I want to see? I want to see that when we let us go back to identifying our years, to naming our years,
Mhm.
to 2022, the year of blah
Amen.
blah blah,
That
and then
is.
let that be the theme for us as part of our independence moving forward. So we have that
Mhm.
independence and that patriotic spirit throughout the year, and then by the time we get to late November, December, we start to
We can
say,
think
you know
about
what,
what we're going to do.
2023 will be blah blah blah. So
Yeah.
people have that sense of, you know what, I'm striving towards this kind of thing. That is what I would love to see, and I hope the relevant authorities are listening.
And when we name the years, as a people, we must look forward to seeing what happens in that year.
Yeah.
And we must make a
Mhm.
conscious effort to contribute towards what is happening in that year. So that by November, December, we can look back and say, yes,
We have done
we
this.
have done this. We
Yes.
have reached, we have achieved. We may not have achieved everything that we hoped to achieve, but at least we can look back and say, here is what we have achieved. Outside of that,
We spin
and
it up in mud.
we spin it up.
Yeah, amen.
That's it.
Mr. St. Louis, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. You've been fantastic as always. You've been wonderful. I mean, wow. I just, have you retired from teaching?
Yes, I retired
Yeah.
from teaching,
Mhm.
but I still teach.
You still teach. All
I
right.
still teach
You've retired from
because
teaching, but you've not retired from educating.
no.
Okay, good. That's a nice way to put it. Mr. St. Louis, thanks so much for being our guest. I mean, it was really informative, and I want to say thanks. I know we've got some folks on the live who too, has been around that share some of those similar sentiments. Sonia, good morning. Andrea, Roseanne, I know that you're there. Christelle. All our friends, tuned in live to our Facebook. Thanks a lot again for being here, and thanks again to our guest, Mr. St. Louis. It has been wonderful. I want to take the time to wish you happy independence as well. And whatever you can do to continue to impart that knowledge, that wisdom, and that lifestyle, please continue to do so. And I hope that we all will be able to join in at some point and be able to do that. And let it be 100,000 or maybe 120,000 of us heading in one direction. Yeah. Thanks a lot, sir. You've been great.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure for me to sit here and just share. And thank you very much again for having me.
Fantastic.
Lovely.
From Edison Mitchell, the Ajamo, to